طلابنا سلام عليكم. Okay, dear students, just to refresh your mind, the concept of mood is one of the basic grammatical notions in linguistics. So في علم اللغة, it is a grammatical feature of verbs. So mood is related to verbs. It has nothing to do with nouns, for example. It is used to fulfill certain functions. And basically, the concept of mood signals modality. Modality يعني تشير للمواقف اللي من خلالها السبيكر يعبر عن شيء معين. Modality is not that prevalent one in Arabic. In English, it is highly significant. And there are lots of papers and books talking about this notion, which is modality. Basically, in English, modality is expressed through modal auxiliaries. A case which is rendered into Arabic by using lexical items. So in Arabic, there are lexical items that are used in order to give an equivalent for a modal auxiliary in English. That is, it is the use of verbal inflections that allow speakers to express their attitude toward what they are saying. For example, they show a statement of fact. They show a desire. They give a command. Command يعني أمر. etc. إلى آخره. The term is also used more broadly to describe the syntactic expression of modality. يعني هذا المصطلح اللي هو المود ماذا يصف؟ It describes the syntactic expression of modality. ماذا يعني هذا الكلام؟ That is the use of verb phrases that do not involve an inflection of the verb itself. The use of verb phrases that do not involve an inflection of the verb itself. شنو معنى هذا الكلام؟ The use of verb phrases that do not involve an inflection of the verb itself. ماذا يعني? What does it mean? Who can answer? What is meant by this statement? شنو المقصود بهذه العبارة؟ إنه the use of verb phrases that do not involve an inflection of the verb itself. Let me explain. So mood is what? Mood is the syntactic expression of modality. ماذا يعني هذا الكلام? It means that the use of verb phrases that do not involve an inflection of the verb itself. هذا الكلام أوضحه مثال. مثلا عندما أخاطب شخص وأقول له you can go out. You can go out. هنا هذا استخدام الكان بعد ما ينطيني شنو؟ ما ينطيني الصلاحية أن أتلاعب بتصريف الفعل. ليش؟ لأن هو هذا حكم الوضع. انطاني فد إشارة إلى أنه يشير إلى أكو نوع من البيرميشن، يعني ينطي سماح للشخص بالخروج. So there is no possibility to make inflections on the part of the verb. لذلك ما راح يتغير تصريف الفعل لوجود هذا الفعل المساعد اللي موجود قبل الانفينيتيف of the verb. بالعربي من استخدم فعل مساعد modal auxiliary، من تستخدم modal auxiliary بعد ما تروح تصرف الفعل اللي بوراه، هو يبقى ثابت الفعل. هذا الفعل المساعد اللي استخدمته هو أعطاني المعنى اللي يريده السبيكر أو الرايتر. So there is no inflection تصريف. There is no inflection on the part of the verb. Why? Due to the presence of the modal auxiliary. يعني بسبب وجود الفعل المساعد الناقص. So language is communication between people. وهذا الأمر بديهي. So this is common knowledge. هذا الأمر بديهي إنه اللغة تستخدم للتواصل ما بين الناس. هذا التواصل شو يعبرون من خلاله؟ They express emotions and attitudes. These emotions and these attitudes are directed towards a listener or addressee. يعني عندك فد مخاطب أنت تريد توجه له هذا الكلام. إذن قضية المود هي باختصار عبارة عن تعبير للمواقف العواطف، المشاعر من خلال اللغة. Basically in English, the notion of mood can be expressed through using modal auxiliaries. إذا من خلال استخدام الأفعال المساعدة نقدر نعبر عن our emotions, our attitudes. This is in English. Now let us see what about Arabic. We are going to show some comparisons through these examples. من خلال الأمثلة نوضح يعني differences and if there are similarities. The first example says, will you lend me your book? Will you lend me your book? This is willingness. يعني I am asking for the willingness of the addressee or the listener to lend me his book. By using the modal auxiliary will, I have expressed willingness. Now, what can we say in Arabic, dear students? If we want to make a comparison, يعني إذا نريد نسوي مقارنة between the English version and the Arabic one, we say that in English there is a modal auxiliary, أكو فعل مساعد, which is will, اللي هو will, which is used to express willingness, استخدم للتعبير عن الرغبة. But in Arabic we have two things, عندنا شيئين in order to give an equivalent, حتى نعطي مكافئ لهذا الشيء. We use a question particle, أداة استفهام اللي هو الهل, plus a lexical item اللي هو يمكن. Okay, so we have two things, a question particle هل plus the lexical item يمكن or بالإمكان, the same, no difference. In order to give an equivalent for the modal auxiliary will, which is used to express willingness. The same auxiliary, which is will, sometimes we use it to give a refusal. نعطي رفض لشيء معين. For example, she won't take any notice. She won't take any notice. This is a refusal. من يترجمها هذه الجملة للغة العربية؟ She won't take any notice.
يعني هي لن تهتم للملاحظة أو لن تهتم لأي شيء.
Okay, so we use the negative particle لن, صحيح؟
Yes.
Yes.
Now, so in English we have two things. هسه الآن بالعكس. بالإنجليزية عندي شيئين. عندي the modal auxiliary will plus the negative particle not. صار عندي won't يعني will not. But in Arabic we have just the negative particle len, which functions what to give us these two things. يعني أعطتني نفي len وأعطتني futurity. Okay, and by using len in Arabic, this is what? This is a strong refusal. There is an insistence. يعني أكو فد إصرار on refusing something. Yeah. Now, in the third example, we also have the same auxiliary. أيضا عندنا نفس الفعل المساعد, which is will. But the implication, يعني المعنى الضمني هنا, is to show strong insistence. فد إصرار قوي لدى المتحدث أو المشار إليه. And in this case, we should what? We should stress the modal auxiliary. يعني يكون عليه تشديد في النطق. لذلك أنا مخليه بالأحمر وهذا جوه خط to highlight it حتى نبرز هذا الفعل المساعد. So he will try to mend it himself. من يقدر يترجم؟
سيحاول إصلاحها بنفسه. يعني إصرار قوي.
سيحاول إصلاحه بنفسه.
سيحاول إصلاحه بنفسه.
بنفسه، نعم، لأن الباء حرف جر وليس بنفسه. anyway. يلا فرقان again please.
سيصلح من نفسه.
لا اكو فد شيء ورا المند ات، اكو فد شيء غير عاقل. هذا الاصلاح، هذا المند يستخدم مع شيء غير عاقل، يعني يصلح فد شيء ما معروف الان هنا، ما مشار الى منه. يس.
سيصلح أخطاءه بنفسه.
شلون دموع بليز؟
سيحاول إصلاحه بنفسه.
طيب وين التشديد؟ التشديد وين؟
بالسين.
بالسين.
سوف. لا بالسين، لأن سوف راح يكون بتأخر أكثر.
اوكي ثانك يو. بعد نقدر نضيف فد مفردة؟
سيحاول أن يعتني بنفسه.
Can we add a lexical item to show that there is strong insistence?
سوف يحاول إصلاحه بنفسه.
Okay, thank you. بعد
سيحاول أن يصلح بنفسه.
Is the insistence.
Yes, Batul, please.
أستاذ سيحاول أن يصلح بنفسه.
One by one. Batul, please.
سيحاول أن يصلح بنفسه.
حسين محمد, please.
سيحاول أن يصالح نفسه.
لا يابا لا. من قلنا مع الأشياء الغير عاقلة وليداتي، عندكم وراها إيت ضمير لغير العاقل. يلا ريام شنو رأيك؟
سيحاول إصلاحه بنفسه.
طيب والتشديد شلون أعكس التشديد مالت الوول غير السين؟ نقول نعم سيحاول جاهدا. سيحاول جاهدا إصلاحه. هذا الهاء ضمير متصل حتى أشير للمقابل إنه أكو في التوكيد. وطبعا هذا the use of himself in English is used to show or to give emphasis. يستخدمه للتوكيد. فهذا الشيء أنا لازم أيضا أبرزه في ترجمتي. نضيف lexical item. عافية. نضيف lexical item in order to reflect the insistence حتى نعكس قضية الإصرار في الكلام. But in English we stress the modal auxiliary. يعني فقط بالسبيتش إنه نخلي تشديد على الفعل المساعد.
Can we say سيحاول ما بوسعه، سيحاول بوسعه إصلاحه بنفسه لو ما يصير؟
اي لا يصير، بالعكس محاولة جيدة. ثانك يو. مو شرط اللي أنا أقوله، أنا أريد فقط فد شيء صحيح أنت من خلاله تعكس هذا الشيء. Anyway, so now let's shift into Arabic. خلينا نتحول إلى اللغة العربية. By the way, I haven't told you that in English we have three types of mood. We have three types of mood. We have the indicative mood, and we have the subjunctive mood, and we have the imperative mood. I would like you to go back to read grammar books about these things. احنا الآن في المرحلة الرابعة مو مجالنا نوضح شنو هو المود. المفروض أنت متجاوز هاي القضية. احنا فقط دورنا نريد نقارن لا أكثر. Contrastive grammar, it means we compare grammatical issues between Arabic and English or vice versa. We are not in a position to deal with these things now because it is supposed that you have already taken them. Anyway, so in Arabic, we also have three types of mood as it is clear in this slide. We have the subjunctive mood, we have the gestative mood, and the indicative mood. Before we go on with these examples, let me say something about mood in Arabic. اللي هي طبعا حالة الفعل في اللغة العربية. In Arabic, and this is an idiosyncratic feature of Arabic. يعني هاي حالة تتميز بها اللغة العربية، إنه in all of these three types the form of the verb شكل الفعل صيغة الفعل the form of the verb is in the present تكون بالمضارع. لاحظ أبرح ويذهب ويكتب هذول although we have different types of mood we have the same form of the verb. But what is the difference between, for example, the indicative and the jussive and the subjunctive? What is the difference between them? Now listen. In the subjunctive mood, there are particles. There are particles that make the present verb subjunctive, such as حتى, لن, وأن. There are هناك أدوات تنصب الفعل المضارع. These particles precede the verb and they change the mood and sometimes the tense. It means that these particles have functions to do. When I say لم يذهب, the particle لم does three things. The particle لم has three functions. First, negation. Two, changing the tense. Three, changing the mood. So the present verb يذهب is affected by the use of the particle لم. When I say يكتب أحمد, يكتب is also in the present form. This is in the indicative mood. يعني حالة الرفع فعل مرفوع هنا. So the present verb in Arabic, it can be subjunctive due to the presence of a particle. It could be in the jussive due to the presence of a particle, and it can be in the indicative mood when there is no particle preceding it. Now, when I say لن أبرح مكاني هذا, لن أبرح مكاني هذا, we can see that the present verb أبرح is in the subjunctive mood. Why? Because we have the particle لن. The particle لن does two things. First, it changes the present verb into future. Two, there is strong negation. It means that when I use لن, there is no possibility to do that thing in the future at all. There is no potentiality to do the action represented by the verb at all through the use of لن in Arabic. When I want to render this into English, I am in a position to use will not emphatically. When I say emphatically, the speaker stresses the modal auxiliary word. So we can say, I won't leave my position here. I won't leave my position here. Now, in the way of a comparison, we can say that the particle لن changes the Arabic mood from the indicative into the subjunctive. This is one. Plus emphasizing what? The refusal of doing something in the future. This can be expressed in English by using will not, but with a stress. In the second example, we have the particle لم. And this is our language, and we know that this particle does the three things. It makes the sentence negative. This is one. It changes the present tense into past. It changes the tense of the present verb into past. Three, it changes the indicative mood into the jussive mood. And as you can see that the marker al-sukun terminates the verb. Why? Due to the presence of this jussive particle lam. And there is what? There is no possibility to do the action of going to the library at all. It is what? It is a permanent negation. It is not temporary. ما هو مؤقت هذا النفي. It is permanent. So it is better to say in English, in order to reflect all of these three things together, I say he did not go to the library yesterday, or he didn't go to the library yesterday. And the third example, which says يكتب أحمد مقالا هذا الأسبوع, is quite clear, dear students, that the verb يكتب is in the present form and in the present tense too. So there is what? There is an absolute tense. When I say absolute tense, it means what? It means that the form of the verb itself reflects the intended tense required. There is no difference between the form and the reference of that form. There is no particle preceding it, so it is in the indicative mood. Now, how can I translate this one? It is possible to do it in two ways, either to use the present simple, or we can use the present continuous tense. I say Ahmed writes, or Ahmed is writing an essay this week. Now we go back to the English story as far as the modal auxiliaries are concerned. In the first example, we have the modal auxiliary can. And in this example, it is used to reflect permission. By the way, this modal auxiliary, which is can express other meanings, not only permission. It depends on the context. كلام يعتمد على السياق. Now, can we sit down in here? Can we sit down in here? Permission. And again, in order to reflect this into Arabic, I can say هل بالإمكان، هل بإمكاننا. وهذا اللكسيكال ايتم، هذا اللكسيكال ايتم اللي هو قضية الإمكانية in Arabic, it can show permission. Plus being preceded by a question particle. Now, in the second example, we have the same meaning. عندنا نفس المعنى, but with a different tense. لكن الزمن يختلف. The auxiliary could here reflects permission in the past. That is why in brackets بين قوسين إذا تلاحظون we have used were allowed. Were allowed هاي تعطي معنى could في نفس المثال. So when I want to translate, عندما أريد أن أترجم, I put into consideration the meaning of the modal auxiliary used in the example here. It is not necessary to use one to one. يعني مو شرط حرفيا. I can guess the meaning, ممكن أن أخمن المعنى, and I go on translating. Now, the prisoners could leave the camp only by permission of the governor. Only by permission of the governor. So واضح ومن خلال through the use of the word permission in the same example, the meaning is what the meaning is permission, but in the past, not in the present or in future. It is permission in the past through the use of could. Yes. How can we render the second example into Arabic? The prisoners could leave the camp only by permission of the governor. How? So the prisoners could leave the camp only by permission of the governor. Could here refers to permission in the past. So here, in order to reflect the use of could, which is used to reflect a permission in the past, in Arabic, I have two things to do. First, to reflect the past tense, يعني لازم أني أعكس قضية الزمن. This is one. Plus reflecting permission. Reflecting permission. يعني ممكن أن أستخدم كان مسموحا للأسرى أن يغادروا المعسكر، أو أقول سمح، أيضا ما فيها مشكلة. Okay. Now, number 3, we have obligation. عندنا إلزام أو إجبار. And this obligation is expressed through the use of must. you must be back by 2 o'clock. And this is a strong obligation through the use of must. You must be back by 2 o'clock. How can we render it into Arabic? The modal auxiliary must is used to reflect what obligation. In Arabic, we have a lexical item. يجب أن مثلا، ينبغي أن، يتوجب، هكذا. So we have a lexical item. احنا لازم عندي فد كلمة، هسه بغض النظر عن هذه الكلمة منو، لكن لازم تعطيني معنى الإلزام أو الإجبار. هنا the comparison is that in English we have a modal auxiliary which is must, which is used to show obligation, but in Arabic we are in a position to use a lexical item to reflect that meaning. خلي أنتقل إلى أمثلة أخرى بها أفعال مساعدة أخرى أيضا تعطي معنى الإلزام لكن مع اختلاف بالدرجة. It says يقول all students should submit their work by a given date. هنا المعنى مال should شنو؟ إذا تلاحظون بين الأقواس. هنا the action of submitting their work يعني تسليم واجباتهم، تسليم أعمالهم، هذا مو شرط ينجز من قبل كل الطلبة. يعني قد يكون هناك عدة طلاب ما يقدر ينجز هذا العمل، فهنا ما يصير أخلي must وما يصير أخلي have to، أخلي should حتى تعطي هذا المعنى أنه إمكانية أداء العمل ما يستطيع كل الطلاب إنجازها. This is the meaning. So I say all students should submit their work by a given date. In Arabic, what can we say in order to reflect this meaning? يعني شنو نقدر نقول حتى نعكس هذا المعنى إنه عدم إمكانية الأداء من قبل كل الطلاب؟ نقول من المفترض أن يسلم جميع الطلبة، وأكمل من المفترض أن حتى أعطي فد احتمالية أنه مو كل الطلاب تقدر. من المفترض أن ننتقل للمثال اللي بعده. هنا مثل ما جاي يشوفون بالمثال الآخر، لا هذا بعد ما بها كل مجال. When I use have to, there is no possibility not to do the action. ما بها مجال أن لا تفعل الحدث. You have to do it. So you have to sign your name here. إذا تلاحظون بين الأقواس مكتوبة otherwise، يعني خلاف ذلك. شنو خلاف ذلك؟ يعني إذا ما وقعت اسمك في هذا المكان. Otherwise the document isn't valid. هاي الوثيقة بعد لا تبقى سارية المفعول. Now we come to influencing people. كيف تؤثر على الناس؟ من خلال إعطاء الأوامر commands. these examples are of different degrees. أكو درجات مختلفة لإعطاء الأمر. يعني sometimes the command is direct. Yes, we can. Sometimes the command is direct. عندما أقول shut the door، هذا أمر مباشر. أقول مثلا you are to shut the door، أيضا هذا أمر. will you shut the door؟ could you shut the door؟ شنو الاختلاف؟ what are the differences؟ when I say could you، طلابنا هذا polite request، هذا طلب أكثر تأدبا. will you، yes it is a request but it is not more polite than using could. So there are different degrees. when شوية انتبهوا لهنا. when there is an auxiliary the harshness of the command is less. يعني قساوة الأمر تكون أقل. هاي واحد. بعد when I use the past form of the auxiliary، يعني من أستخدم الشكل الماضي للفعل المساعد مثلا could، this is more polite than the present form، أكثر تأدبا من أستخدم كان أول. and both ways I mean by using auxiliaries is what is more polite than direct commands، أكثر تأدبا من الأوامر المباشرة. اغلق مجزوم، الأمر مجزوم باللغة العربية. إذا نخلي في بالنا as a way of comparison that the imperative mood in English، أعيد The imperative mood in English has its equivalent in Arabic as the جسد mood. يعني حالة الجزم بالفعل. The جسد mood in Arabic is equivalent to the imperative mood in English. Okay. Okay, so please try to read, because this is for your benefit. Try to benefit from everything, whether you read books on a grammar in both languages. I mean, you can read the grammar books on Arabic separately and on English separately, and you can deduce things. You can prepare things by yourselves. Thank you.